with anybody listening to this or anybody who comes with me with questions and things like that, because we are human, right? Like none of us are perfect. We have our own struggles, and the problem comes when you ignore that. And that was me, right? I was there. Some people don't know this unless they ask, but there was one time, that I lived here in Michigan, before I did now. And all I knew was my life that I had beforehand. Like love going to work, I got to put my stuff on an engine every day, had a good family life. We did a lot of stuff. And when we moved up here, it was a huge change for me. And I struggled with that. And because I didn't really deal with that probably the proper way, that really put a lot of strain on me mentally. I went through a lot of depression and things like that. My performance at work wasn't where it needed to be, even in my household, I was just a completely different person than what I was originally, and it wasn't until many years later where I was able to look back and realize that. And, at that point I was working in an organization up here, and by all means, man, like I should have been happy, right? I should have been thrilled because I was facing layoff from the fire department I was working for currently. And, this department gave me a chance, and, I just got in there and it was so different. Like the people were different. The way they operated was different. And I really, really struggled with that a lot. And I didn't feel like I was myself anymore. And unfortunately, the byproduct of that was I ran from it, right? I was like, no, I got to go back to what I know. I got to go back to where I feel safe, where I feel comfortable. Like, so we moved back to Florida and everything else like that. And you realize that at a certain point, like you got to stop running from your issues, especially mentally, right? You got to try and learn how to adapt and fight that head on. And, again, I didn't for many years, even when I was back in Florida, and it wasn't until recently when we moved back here to Michigan that I realized, like, I've got to do something about this. I've let it go for years and years and years thinking it'd fix itself, and it's not fixing itself, so guess what? I sat down with a therapist. I got put on some medication to help, and I'm not ashamed of that. Nobody should be ashamed of that.
Yeah, never.
You know what I mean? It happens. We're all human, right? So the way that maybe you handle something or I handle that same situation, that's going to be very different, right? So it's okay, like you said, to not be okay and reach out for help and talk about it and find a solution, because the only thing that's going to happen when you ignore that is it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and your whole life is going to be upside down, and you're going to be wondering, how the fuck did I get here? Yeah. Right? Hopefully you don't reach to the point where you feel it's necessary to take your own life to escape. Fortunately, that wasn't the point where I was, but, many people do get to that point. And we have to do a better job in the fire service of realizing those situations and trying to reach out and help our brothers and sisters with that, and do everything that we can, and not just be like, oh, maybe this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Or hey, sucks. That sucks that you're in that situation. I don't know how to help you. Like,
you got to just detach from it.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I can't, like, even if it's not a thing, even if it's not a bad call or whatever it is, I think that's, people are like, oh, I haven't even had a bad call. It's interesting. After I published this article, I had a couple of people at my department and people I knew at other departments come to me that I've known for years. And they're like, hey man, I've been through the same shit, man. I was on, I'm on antidepressants and I never told anybody, and I'm like, dude, why are we ashamed of that? Like, if I tear my ACL, I'm not going to be like, no, my ACL's fine, bro. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're limping. I swear, bro, I'm good. ACLs are for quitters,
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting part. It's human nature. Like, we have no problem telling people how well we're doing, right? Yeah. How successful we might be or whatever like that. But we have very, very hard time telling people how well we're not, or, how unwell we really are in certain areas, or that, hey, I'm just not doing okay with this, and it's weird because I remember having a bad call, and it messed with me for a while. And the response that I got was pretty much like, I asked to go home, essentially. Like, I'm like, hey, I need to go home. I can't, like, I'm just mentally just not here right now. Like, this is really, and I pretty much got told, like, finish getting your truck in order and go back in service. We'll call the critical incident team. Dude, they arrived and they were more concerned with grab assing and talking shit to all their buddies than they were checking on my partner and I, right? And I just remember being like, is this where we're at in the fire service? Like, you guys are supposed to be here to help, and your resolution to it is just get back on the horse and keep going, man. It'll be okay. And it wasn't, it wasn't for weeks, and it took a captain of that. We were at the hospital and he came in, and he's like, hey man, you're not doing okay, are you? Dude, I broke down. I started crying, and he gave me a hug and we talked about it. He's like, we'll get through it. And the funny thing is that guy wasn't even on the call. He wasn't even assigned to my station or any of that stuff, but he had enough awareness to know, like, hey, something's not right with this person. Let me try and help them. Yeah. And that's what I think collectively all need to get at. We all have that ability to see when something's not right with somebody that we work with. Just reach out. Hey man, maybe they don't want to talk. That's fine. But hey, just know that I'm here for you. If you need anything, we'll get through it together. Because like you said, brotherhood, that term's thrown around. Well, we also have the sisterhood, right? Because we have women in the fire service, but that encompasses everything. Yeah. Be a family. I would never look at my wife or kids if they had a problem and say, yeah, tough shit, figure it out. Yeah. I'm going to help them get through it. And, that needs to happen a lot more in our profession.
I agree 100%. And, I think we've made leaps and bounds in regard to critical incident stress management and things like that. We're moving in the right direction. So, it just is a personal example. So my organization obviously was the one where this guy was told, suck it up, buttercup, basically. And then years later, we unfortunately had a situation where we lost a police officer line of duty. And everybody that was on shift that day was pulled into CISM, whether you wanted to go. There were guys who didn't want to go. I'm not going. And it was actually that same guy who had talked to me about, hey man, you don't seem like you're doing okay. He pulled the guy aside and was like, hey dude, I've seen calls like this destroy people. So even though you think you're okay, like, you need to come in here and talk. And like, they did a great job. They had the trauma surgeon that was there, talked to us. They had our chaplain. They had some other people. It wasn't the situation that you had, fortunately, right? Because that's not what it needs to be. So that just, in my opinion, shows that at least we're kind of, I think, headed in the right direction, and yeah, this is some hard shit, like that we have to deal with sometimes. And, it's not all the time. And cough and humor and all that stuff can only go so far. Sometimes you have to go get real help. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, then I'm going to turn it over to Nick. We have a tremendous asset right now in our fire service for these exact things, and I personally, that's where I started. I reached out to it. Blake Stinnett from Next Rung. He does amazing work, and he's here to help, and they'll cover it. You know what I mean? They will do everything they can, and when I had that conversation with him and everybody else, their phones are always on. There's a number you can call anytime. Someone will answer it, and they will not stop until you get the help you need. And I'm not saying like they're going to be like pestering you, but they will work endlessly to figure out. Like, they found they researched my area, found therapists that took my insurance and stuff. And then Blake was like, hey, listen, if you have any insurance issues, this is what we're here for. Let me know. Like, we'll help out with the costs and all that stuff. And, they're making it very, very easy for firefighters to reach out and say, like, hey, I'm not okay. Help me. And they will do everything in their power to do that. So if anybody's listening and they know somebody who's in a situation like that, or maybe you're in a situation like that yourself, like, please reach out to Blake and his excellent crew at Next Rung, because it'll be one of the life-changing things for you. And you'll be very, very glad that you did. I certainly feel a lot better. I talked to other people who've gone through that, and they're just different and in a good way. Like, you feel like you look at them and you see this weight lifted off, like they're able to be themselves again, which is a huge relief, right? So yeah, please check them out and go do that. And that's my little shameless plug for Next Rung there, because I do believe in them. Like I said, personally, and I've also seen friends of mine go through that, and it's just an excellent thing for us to be able to tap into.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Taking away all those barriers, if the fewer barriers you have to jump over, it's a lot easier to get help. That's great.
Yeah, man. It's at the end of the day, you got to remember everybody's got their own demons, man. Everybody's got their own things they're dealing with, and I think it's so easy to, attack people when they're having an off day, or maybe they're just not acting themselves, or they drop the ball when they're normally they're solid on this, and what the hell's the matter with you? But we got to remember, like, sometimes an act of kindness goes a long way, right? Sometimes just taking a step back and say, you know what, maybe they're going through something, goes a long way. And here's the thing: people build culture, right? Therefore, if you want to influence culture, influence people. If you invest in people, you're essentially investing in culture. And that we can't forget that. That's, at the end of the day, if we want to build a training culture, a positive organizational culture, then we have to invest in people, because people are the ones that are going to, all the stuff we talked about for the last 2 hours, right? It's the people that drive the organization forward. And so, I think this is a really good way to close the show today. I think that ultimately we got to remember that if people are struggling, it's that whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If they're struggling to pay the bills, or struggling in their marriage or relationships, if they're struggling with depression, if they're struggling with, whatever, they're not going to be top performers, because they're struggling with meeting basic needs, whether it's emotional, physical, financial, whatever it is. If people don't feel secure in who they are, what they are, where they're at, ultimately it doesn't matter what you do until you address those needs. You're not ever going to get to that top performance. You're not going to get the best out of them, and it doesn't matter who it is. So ultimately, like, as instructors, as senior guys, as whatever position you're in, like, care about people. If you care about people and do the right thing for the right reasons, that's what's going to make the biggest impact long term, because people are going to see you're genuine, you're authentic, you're the real deal, right? You're consistent, you're transparent. You don't, I see people who do this all the time. They're afraid to fail. Like, it's okay. Like, if you fail or you're struggling, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I messed up. Hey, you know what? I'm not okay. So, what that does is that bridges that gap. And that's really, it's very, you become very vulnerable at that point, right? When you open yourself up and expose your failures, your weaknesses and stuff. But what you do in the process is people are going to see that and, like, man, okay, this person's real. Like, they're not full of crap after all. Like, and what I think that does, though, is, sometimes those people that are on the fence, or maybe they're like, maybe you've had little rubs with them or whatever, when they realize you're a real person and you care about them as a real person, like, that's when friendships and bonds can be made, right? Or bridges can be built between those people. I mean, until you get to that point where there's, that whole, that whole process where people, when people first meet, right? What do? They kind of have this initial, like, almost like a honeymoon, where there's like this very formal, hey, how's it going? And you have this, and then there's, that forming, storming, norming, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what happens with people's lives, right? And so, like, some people are, that you're butting heads with, just haven't really seen the real you yet, right? Or maybe they haven't come to the point where they kind of, realize that you actually care about them. They're not just a number. They're not just an employee. Because when they're struggling and you reach out that hand and you say, hey, are you okay? Hey, I'm here for you. A lot of times those people that are kind of rough around the edges and trying to put on a front will break down and realize, like, holy shit, like, I'm going through this stuff, and this is the only guy that reached out to me. And you never know what your impact will be. I can't tell you how many people, dude, that, I'll say something, and like 2 months later, I had a guy come up to me recently and say, man, I gotta tell you, I was going through some stuff a couple months ago, and whether you realize it or not, you're the only person who asked how I was doing. You're the only person that just, and I don't know why, like, just randomly one day, I texted him. I was like, hey, everything good? You doing all right? And of course they blew it off. Yeah, I'm good. Everything's great. But they weren't great. But that little gesture of just taking a minute to text and say, hey, are you okay? help kind of get them over the hump, if you will. It was just a little bit of like fuel to keep going. Like, okay, someone's watching, someone cares. And so, like, Sean was saying about the next run, one of the biggest things we could do for our brothers and sisters is pick up the damn phone. Pick up the phone from time to time and just say, hey, I care about you. How are you doing? Like, them as a person, not them as an employee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
How are you doing? Like, not is everything okay or whatever. We're so quick to kind of overlook, people like, how's it going? Oh, I'm doing all right. And we just keep going. We just don't ever think twice about it. But how many people say that in the fire service and they're not okay? I've done it.
Oh,
you
sure.
try to blow it up because you don't want to burden somebody with your problems. But the fact of the matter is we all need help sometime. We all need somebody to kind of just to kind of reach out their hand every once in a while and say, dude, I'm here for you. Like, I don't need to know all your details, whatever, necessarily. If you don't want to share that, that's fine. But if you ever need someone to talk to, or if you ever just want to go, like, have a cup of coffee, have a beer, whatever, like, that goes a long way. And we may think that's a small gesture, but it's usually the small gestures that pay the greatest dividends, because especially when they're authentic and they're real, right? When you're just being a genuinely concerned and caring person. But like I said, man, in closing, this has been a great conversation. I think we've really touched on some great stuff today, from culture to training to mindset to the psyche of how we do what we do and why we do what we do, all the way down to the real core of the issue, which is people, right? And who people are and what they're going through, and realizing, like, nobody's too big or too important where they don't need help every once in a while. That being said, it's been good to have you on the show, Adam. Thank you for taking a couple hours of your time to kind of dive into some of stuff you're passionate about, some of the things that you've researched, and to share your love for the job with others. It's definitely been a great episode, man. I definitely think that there's been some really good information shared here. There's been some good stuff that I think is going to be helpful for people listening to the show. Sean, thanks for kind of spearheading this thing today, man. I sound like a bullfrog, but
I got you, bro.
No, man, it really is good to have these conversations, though, because I think this is it's raw, it's real, it's unscripted. We didn't have an agenda coming into this, and that's the beauty of these conversations, is we're not afraid to chase the rabbit trail every once in a while, because there's good conversations down those holes every once in a while. So, Alan, thanks again, dude, for coming on the show, man.
Man, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with y'all.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. And I just got a couple things to add before we leave is, whatever your situation is with inside your organization, you got to do three distinct things, right? You have to acknowledge the bad, embrace the good, but ultimately give your all in everything. That's the only way that we're going to get through this thing. And, we have to embrace the privilege we have, that to make a difference, not just with inside of our organization, but outside of our organization too. Every run that we make is a chance to do that. So, it's important that we know and learn how to influence our culture and not attack it. Like, nothing's perfect. So, how do we navigate that, right? But earlier on, we were talking about traditions and things like that. And we do have to respect our traditions, right? Honor those who came before us and why we do the things that we do. But we also have to make new ones, right? So those are just really my closing thoughts for it. And Adam, again, I appreciate you coming on and sharing our time with us. And I'll turn it over to you if you have any closing remarks you'd like to make to anybody.
Yeah, man, I don't really have anything else to add. I think you guys have made some great points, and hopefully somebody will at least pull one or two little nuggets out of this and, go back and make a difference, man. We get to do this job, and it's amazing. It's cool as shit. And, it's a privilege. If you had asked me 20 years ago when I was, a 17-year-old, 150-pound kid with hair down the middle of my back, that, hey, man, one day you're going to be out there as a fireman, I'd laugh in your face, So it's great, man. It's great to be here talking with y'all, and yeah.
Yeah, that's it, man. I mean, we get to do this job, right? We get to do one of the coolest jobs on the earth. We get to make an impact in ways that most people never dream about doing, right? So live life intentionally, man. Do this stuff, don't just go in half-assed to, invest in people, invest in the job, love it. And walk away, knowing that you left it better than you found it, right?
Yes,
and that should be the goal
100%.
for all of us. Leave it better than you found it. So, in closing, you guys that are listening to the show, go check out some of Adam's articles. Like I said, he's in all, I think, like I said, firehouse, fire engineering, and fire rescue wants some good information out there. And look them up. If someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
I have a Facebook that's just my name, I think, and I poorly. It's either my name or it's Banana Phantom. I can't remember, which is anyway. I also poorly run a Facebook page that's performance culture. I've got some lectures coming up. The next one is I'll be teaching at the Texas EMS Educators Symposium in Corpus Christi. I'm the keynote speaker there, and then I don't know, wherever else my wife will let me go teach. So that's about it, man. I don't have a huge presence out there yet. So the Facebook performance culture, that's the primary one. I'm trying to get a little bit better about keeping stuff up to date on that. So
cool, man. Well, like I said, you guys go check them out. I think that, you got some really good stuff, man. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I've enjoyed, that's the great thing about this job is that, we've never met before. Till today, officially, yeah. We messaged back and forth, but to sit down with guys that just they care, they get it, that are into the job, is what makes this job so amazing. Because no matter where you go across the country, you run into firemen all over the place that share that spark, that share that passion, and that's what drives this. It drives the fire service forward. Is the people that truly care, that are truly invested, and are doing good stuff. For the right reasons, like I said, and that's what makes us all better. And so, Adam, thank you for investing in the fire service. Thank you for taking time to, share that with us today. It's been fun. I look forward to hopefully having some more conversations in the future. And you guys have a great day.
Thank you.